Alright boys, let's just get it out of our system.
Erdély Magyarország nem létezik!
Bazzol meg!
Volna is megmondani, hogy pénztár létezik!
Welcome to Transylvania, one of the most famous regions in Europe, known for Gothic architecture, magnificent nature, and Hungarians who won't stop talking about it in the YouTube comment section. Piros, fehér, zöld, ez a magyar föld! Oi, we took it out in the beginning. Elég! Transylvania today is known as one of three historical regions of Romania, alongside Wallachia and Moldavia. Historically, the region was made up of four other provinces, those being Maramuresh, Crișana, Banat, and Transylvania proper, also known as Ardeal, aka Erdély. However, today it is known only as the region in the middle. Throughout the ages, Transylvania was and still is a home to a variety of ethnic groups such as the Romanians, Hungarians, Germans, and Slavs. The Romanian province boasts a population of 6.7 million, with its largest city being Cluj-Napoca, aka Kolozsvár, with a population of 303,000. The history of Transylvania is quite complex and is the subject of intense debate today. To abridge it simply, it was first a part of Dacia, then Rome, then a bunch of tribesmen became a part of Hungary, Hungary got its ass kicked by the Turks, it became independent, then got divided by the Turks and Austrians, then it was fully Austrian, after World War I became Romanian, World War II divided by Hungary and Romania, and today it is fully under the control of Romania. With such a complex history, it is no surprise that Transylvania is a melting pot of architecture, culture, and language. As all of the civilizations that controlled it at one point in time left their mark on the land. Speaking of language, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, LingoPie. Hey you! Have you studied German for most of your life, endlessly going through boring grammar textbooks and still unable to form a coherent sentence? Yeah? Well, it's time for you to switch to LingoPie and finally learn enough German so you can migrate to every Eastern European's promised land. LingoPie allows you to watch original local content with same language subtitles. While watching, you can click on any word in the subtitles to get an instant translation of that word or phrase in real time. You can also then review every word or phrase that you didn't understand after an episode using built-in tools and features. Alongside with interactive subtitles, you can also mix foreign subtitles with English ones, change the playback speed, pull up a sidebar script in real time with all the sentences from the show/movie you're watching. LingoPie also offers flashcards where you can practice words that you clicked on, as well as quizzes where you can test out your knowledge and see if you're ready to book that plane ticket to Munich. And if that wasn't enough, you can also practice your pronunciation with live feedback. Currently the site offers 7 languages, those being Spanish, French, Russian, German, English, Italian, and Portuguese. And this year they plan on adding 3 more, Chinese, Japanese, and even Turkish. Alongside that, new TV shows and movies are added to the catalog every week, and you can even get a 7-day free trial. So don't waste any time, click the link in the description and start learning today. It's basically like Netflix for language learners, but even cheaper, especially if you use my custom code down below. Trust me, you won't regret it. Go and check it out. The geography of Transylvania is characterized as a plateau, which is surrounded completely by the Carpathian Mountains. Towards its borders, the region becomes mountainous and forested, while in its middle it is composed of plains and woodlands. On this land, around 70% of the population identifies as Romanians, 18% as Hungarians, 4% as Gypsies/Roma, and the rest are various others such as Ukrainians and Germans. Much like its ethnic population, Transylvania's religious composition is also quite diverse. Around 65% of its inhabitants identify themselves as Eastern Orthodox, around 11% as Catholic, and 14% Protestant, which are made up of various other subgroups, the biggest of which are the Lutherans, Calvinists, Evangelicals, and Unitarians. To start off our journey in Transylvania, we're gonna head to the historic and the 14th largest city in the province, Deva. Deva is a city with around 61,000 inhabitants, located in western Transylvania. The first time it was ever mentioned was in the 13th century as Castrum Deva. The name origins of the city are debated. Some believe that the name comes from either an ancient Dacian or Latin word, Dava, meaning fortress, while others argue that it is of Slavic origin, meaning maiden. The city is defined by the Deva Fortress, which lies atop of an extinct volcano, symbolizing, of course, power, might, and status, as well as the modern obsession we men have with height. The fortress can be seen from all over the city. Similarly to the town, the fortress was also built in the 13th century as a defensive measure against the Genghis Khan fanboy club, while the fortress you see today was built in the medieval ages. Fortifications existed here ever since the time of the Dacians, who built the first fort here as a way to look over the Mureș Valley and protect their precious crops and settlements. Later on, the Romans did what they did best and civilized them, as well as took over the fortress, upon which they improved its fortifications. Today it is a hotspot for tourists coming to check out the city. On top of the fortress you can see Deva in its full glory, alongside Romania's amazing countryside. Oh, and watch out! Word is out that the serpent that made Eve take a bite out of the forbidden fruit moved here after losing his job in the Garden of Eden, and is now manipulating people to call their exes, repeating such phrases as "She misses you. Call her. Call her, send her a text message. She loves you. She still has feelings for you. Call her." Moving down from the castle, you will find yourself at Deva Center, which in typical European fashion is a pedestrian zone filled with, say it with me, cafes, shops, and restaurants. The buildings decorating the town area are a mix of a variety of styles. Predominantly, though, you will see the brutalist and Stalinist buildings. Within the center stands tall the statue of the greatest Dacian king, Decebalus. Within Deva, there are also several churches, which I would definitely recommend taking a look at. Those will be the dioceses of Deva and Hunedoara, which is an Orthodox church built in 2009. Then there is the Reformed church, which was built in the early 20th century, and I think is super cute as it has a lovely neo-Romanesque style and is quite modest in size. Next to it you can find the Hunedoara County Prefecture, which is yet another stunning building due to its colorful facade and design, which is just mwah. Eclectic buildings I'd say would have to be one of my favorites, and Transylvania is full of them. Finally, the last church of note would be the Church of Holy Archangel Michael and Gabriel, which is absolutely stunning in the evening, as it shines in white and blue, which makes it a marvel to stare at. 15 kilometers south of the city lies Deva's complementary and equally beautiful neighboring city, Hunedoara. Also known as Vaida Hunyad, the town serves as an important role in both Romania's and Hungary's history, hell, arguably even the history of the Balkans, as it is the cradle of the Hunyadi dynasty. While the Romanian peasants spent their time living in houses made out of reeds and mud, the Hunyadi dynasty enjoyed laughing at them from afar, while sitting on the balcony of their lavish Corvin castle, found near the town. In the early 15th century, the castle was given by the king of Hungary to Voicu Hunyadi, who was seen as the founder of the dynasty, as a reward for helping the king restoring his control in Wallachia. After Voic's death, his elder son János Hunyadi, also known as Iancu de Hunedoara, inherited the castle and would go on to become the richest and most powerful man in Transylvania and Hungary, and at the end of it becoming the regent of the kingdom. Throughout his life, János would become known as the defender of Christendom, as he dedicated his life fighting the Ottomans, and unlike most other Balkaners, actually was successful in defeating them, while also dripping hard. In 1442, the Ottoman Sultan, angered by one of Hunyadi's raids, decided to invade Transylvania with an army of 70,000 soldiers. The Pasha in charge enjoyed bragging that the mere sight of his turban made his enemies run away. János, being a poor Balkan boy, could only muster a force of 50,000 men. Even so, he inflicted a devastating defeat to the Ottomans at the Battle of Yalomica River. So fucking rip, bozo! Other battles that would end up defining his long and prestigious military career would be the battle for Kruševac, Niš, Sofia, and most notable of all, the Battle of Belgrade, where Hunyadi defended the city from the infamous Sultan Mehmed II the Conqueror and his deadly force of 100,000 men. But still, nothing compares to the fights my parents had throughout my childhood. János would be succeeded by his younger son Mátyás Corvinus, who would later on go on to become the King of Hungary, beloved by both Hungarians and Romanians alike. King Mátyás would become best known for subjugating the pesky Czech Hussites and taking control of Bohemia, as well as building an Orthodox church for his Wallachian serfs, which all contributed to him gaining the title Christ's Champion. Under him, Corvin Castle became the largest one in medieval Europe. Regarding the castle itself, the version you see today was built in the 15th century by János himself in an easily recognizable Gothic style and has come to define Transylvania. The Corvin Castle is split into three large areas, those being the Knight's Hall, the Dyed Hall, and the Circular Stairway, each of which are surrounded by both circular and rectangular towers that were used to imprison peasants that dared say shit about the king, and to fight off Mehmet and his armies of coveted Christian boys. It is also notable to say that the castle was destroyed 5 times by a fire, and during the times of János's reign, the infamous Vlad Cepes the Impaler was held prisoner within the castle by the Mad Lad Regent. Oh yeah, and while I was there, they were shooting some fake-ass medieval TV show, so if you accidentally see me on TV, now you know why. Moving on from Hunedoara, we head on to Sibiu, or Nagy Szeben, nicknamed the City with Eyes. Sibiu, like most other cities in Transylvania, has a long and diverse history. It first emerged as a Daco-Roman city under the name of Sidonia. However, after the nomadic invasions of Transylvania, it became depopulated until it was re-inhabited by German settlers from the HRE in the 12th century, who established the city and named it initially Hermannstadt, meaning Hermann's City, which made it one of the most important centers of Transylvanian German/Saxons. In the upcoming centuries, Sibiu would serve as a trading hub within the region and Hungarian kingdom as a whole. After the Turks finally defeated the Hungarians, the city became the main hub of Ottoman operations in Transylvania. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, Sibiu was a hub of Romanian literature and culture, and became the metropolitan seat, which made the third most important center for the Orthodox Church in Romania. The defining point of Sibiu would be none other than the large square, which is the historic center of the city, surrounded by numerous structures of interest such as the Holy Trinity Roman Catholic Church, Brukenthal National Museum, and the Houses with Eyes, which gave the city its reputation. Although they have eyes, I doubt even they could see my parents' divorce coming. Throughout the Middle Ages, the square was the headquarters of the most important events that took place within the city, such as public gatherings, festivals, and of course, executions. Arguably, the defining building of the square, alongside with the Brukenthal Museum, would be the Holy Trinity Roman Catholic Church, also known as the Jesuit Church, which was built sometime in the 18th century when Transylvania was taken over by the Austrians. With the arrival of the Austrian soldiers, many proclaimed a need for a Catholic church, thus it came into being. Located in the east corner of the Great Square stands the Council Tower, also known as Turnul Sfatului. The tower has been known as a characteristic symbol of Sibiu ever since the 14th century. Back in the day, it used to be used as a fortification against the enemies of glorious Hungary. Today, though, it is a regular clock tower that ends up in the background of Westerners' vacation Instagram photos. Near the Sfatului Tower is yet another landmark of Sibiu, that being the Lutheran Cathedral, which is yet another Gothic beauty. I swear to God, I might not be into goth chicks, but goddamn am I into goth architecture. The church reaches the height of 73 meters and is easily recognizable with its colorful roof and 4 turrets. Fun fact, the turrets were actually symbolically added as a warning to foreigners that if they did something dumb while in town, the administration could sentence them to death. Exploring Sibiu, you will find many passages that lead to hidden streets of the city. One such would be the passage of stairs that leads to the lower section of the town. Exploring the town some more, you will eventually end up at the Citadel Park and Potter's Tower. The Potter's Tower is another iconic landmark of the city, as it was built in the 15th century by the Potters' Guild, as yet another line of fortification. Around it is a park, which you can see people riding bikes and going for a stroll. However, arguably the best thing Sibiu has to offer is not within the city itself, but 4 kilometers away from the Dumbrava forest, where the largest open-air museum in Europe is located, the Astra Museum of Traditional Folk Civilization. Now, if you've been a long-time viewer of the channel, you should know by now that I'm not the biggest fan of museums and parks, as I am a barbarian that comes from the Western Balkans, and the only thing we consider culturally educational is wasting your life savings on betting tickets for Arsenal. However, I have to say that the Astra Museum has absolutely blown my mind, and if you need a reason to come and visit Romania, this alone should be it. What makes this museum so unique is that it stretches a whole 10 kilometers in length and shows traditional structures that were found in all parts of Romania prior to the Industrial Revolution. As such, it simulates a village and incorporates 5 large sectors that have buildings related to agriculture, raising animals, apiculture, fishing, hunting, and just regular dwelling. Just walking through this museum feels like you've traveled back in time, and it's purely pristine. Seriously, I cannot recommend this place enough, and it only costs €5 to enter, and you can virtually spend the entire day exploring it. And they even have live animals. And no, I don't mean people who eat pizza with ketchup on it. Disgusting. Moving on from Sibiu, we head on east, where 114 kilometers from the ex-German city lies the second largest city in Transylvania, Brasov. Also known as Brasov, the city was first founded in the early 13th century by none other than the Teutonic Knights, as a trading colony under the name of Kronstadt. Throughout the Middle Ages, the city was an important hub of trade in the region, as it was the main supplier of cloth, weapons, tools, and wax throughout the principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia. Alongside trading with both Romanian principalities, Brasov was also the main merchant connection between Europe and the Ottoman Empire. As such, the city was of key strategic importance and constantly had fortifications improved. Thus, when walking throughout Brasov, one can see numerous walls and towers, which were all lifted to prevent the Turks from pulling a Constantinople on them. Even so, they still managed to take over the city eventually, but very few structures were damaged. Most likely the first place you will stumble upon when arriving in Brasov is the Council Square, aka the Piața Sfatului, which is the historic center of the city where throughout history merchants would come and sell you actual products instead of your data. Around it you can find a variety of Baroque, Neo-Renaissance buildings from the 18th and 19th centuries. In the middle of the square stands the Brasov City Hall, which was built sometime in the 15th century and used to be the pride of the city due to its beauty. On top of the building stands the Trumpeter's Tower, which used to be the watchtower during the time before basic hygiene existed. A bit further away from the main square stands tall the Black Church. No, not that type of black church, this one. Yet another monument of Gothic craftsmanship. Built in the 14th century, this building is a monument to the Lutheran faith and one of the most important houses of worship, if not the most important in the region. When the church was first built, it was not black at all. Rather, it got its color due to the pollution caused by the industrialization of Austria-Hungary in the 19th century. The church was built by imported Bulgarian workers. According to a popular legend, during the building of the church, some German kid came up to the builders and started annoying them, or told them that one of the walls was leaning. So one of the Bulgarians, in your natural fashion, annoyed with the child, pushed him off of the church tower and then concealed his corpse within the walls of the church. Next to the Black Church is also Catherine's Gate, which is one of many fortification buildings built to preserve the city from becoming the next Serbia. It was built by the town's Tailors Guild in the 16th century and is the only medieval city gate that remained in Brasov. Above the city stand the White and Black Towers. The White Tower was built sometime in the mid-15th century and was the highest fortification point within Brasov. Not far from it is the Black Tower, whose main purpose was to cock-block enemies from reaching the walls of the city. It too was built at the same time as the White Tower. Of course, when talking about Brasov, one must mention the St. Nicholas Church, which is the oldest Orthodox church in the city and the most important religious building in the region. The exact date of the church's construction is unknown, but it is believed to be sometime in the late 15th century on top of a previous wooden church that had been erected ever since the 13th century. The structure is made out of brick and stone and was originally done in the Gothic style. However, over the years it underwent several renovation efforts that made it more Baroque. What's significant about the church as a whole is that it founded the first Romanian school, whose building can be seen next to it. The school itself was built in the 15th century during the reign of the Hungarians. The first classes in the Romanian language were officially held in the late 16th century. Considering that it was the only Romanian school in the whole of Transylvania, its students came from all over the region. It is said that each village paid for one student to attend the school so that they could teach their communities back home upon their return. On average, the school boasted 110 students per year. Today, the building serves as a museum in which you can find the first ever Romanian printing press. Around 20 kilometers south of Brasov lies the quaint tower of Rasnov, as it has a population of only 15,000. However, looks can be deceiving. Within Rasnov, one can see the more quiet life of Romania, as well as the Rasnov Fortress, which was built by the Teutonic Knights in the 13th century. Despite its fortifications, it was razed down to the ground several times by everyone and their mother, including the guys who had a sauce named after them, the guys who can't fix their economy, and the guys who liked making shish kebabs out of the guys who can't fix their economy. According to a local legend, during one siege of the fortress by the Ottomans, the citizens had trouble obtaining water. Thus they made 2 of their captured Turkish prisoners dig a well, with a promise that if they dug it, they'd be set free. It took the men 17 years to finish the well, and upon doing so, they were still killed. So congratulations, you played yourself.
Congratulations! 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 Congratulations!
Another 10 kilometers southwest, going through Transylvania's beautiful countryside, lies Bran, aka Turda, yet another on first glance insignificant Romanian town, but oh boy, would you be wrong for thinking that. Because in this town stands the one and only Dracula's castle. Now, here's the thing. Dracula, aka Vlad Tzepes, never lived in this castle, nor did he have any control over Transylvania whatsoever, as he was the Prince of Wallachia, which was south here. The guy who wrote Dracula didn't even state that the character of Dracula was inspired by the prince. So how is this Dracula's castle? Well, dear viewer, basically the story goes as follows. Some rich guy had a castle in Bran and really liked the book Dracula. So he decided to renovate his castle based on what he had read, and called it Dracula's Castle. Somehow word spread and people started believing that Vlad the Impaler actually lived here, and this castle was the inspiration for the book. But Bram Stoker, the author, even noted that he had no idea of the castle's existence. So all in all, this castle has nothing to do with either Vlad or Dracula and simply has the title because one guy who owned it really liked the book. Regarding the castle itself, much like most other places in Brasov County, it was built by the Teutons in the 13th century. It was used as a defensive structure against the Ottomans and as a customs post between Transylvania and Wallachia. After World War I, the castle became the royal residence of the Romanian royal family, particularly Marie of Romania, who used it as her getaway home, and during World War II, the castle was used as a hospital. Today, the castle is a museum displaying Queen Mary's possession as well as hosting kitsch haunted house exhibitions. If you ask me, if you choose to come here, you should definitely go more into the countryside, as it is way more interesting than the castle, and you'll have a much more pleasurable experience hiking in the area than looking at old furniture that really isn't that culturally or historically significant. Moving on, located in the very heart of the country, or to be more specific, in the eastern part of Transylvania, lies a tiny town with enormously large historical impact, preserved cultural heritage, and breathtaking scenery. That town being Sighisoara. This town is a very popular tourist attraction in Romania, mainly due to their well-preserved walled old town, which managed to survive even their dark communist period, as well as the heaven on earth medieval period. With such a rich and eventful history, you would guess that the town was home to many influential people, and that would be true. Some famous examples being Vlad Dracul and the father of Vlad III the Impaler, and the sculptor Elias Nicolae also had the privilege to call this town his home. The town was also a place of many historical battles, like the Battle of Sighisoara, where the revolutionary Hungarian army led by Joseph Bem was defeated by the Russian army. And most recently the Holy Grail War of 2004, where mages worthy of summoning heroic spirits fought one another for the chance to claim their grail's power for themselves. On top of the hall lies the Sighisoara citadel, which is the historic center of the town that overlooks the rest of the city. It was built by Germans that settled the area in the 12th century, and has more or less stayed the same over the years, which made the citadel and the city of Sighisoara itself a part of UNESCO's heritage list. Within the citadel's walls, you can find plenty of colorful medieval houses, many of which have been converted to shops and restaurants that sell Dracula-themed merchandise. Within the center of the citadel stands the Sighisoara clock tower, which is the defining landmark of the town. Back in medieval times, the tower used to be the main entry point of the citadel, and up until the 16th century, it was also the town hall. The structure was built in the 14th century out of sandstone and River Rock, and ever since its conception it was seen as a public good rather than private property like many of the other towers found throughout the city. Nearby is also the Klosterkirche, aka the monastery church, which is one of the defining churches in Sighisoara. Much like many of the previously mentioned buildings, the Klosterkirche was also built by the Germans in the 13th century. Like many before it, it used to belong to the school of Catholicism. However, after the Reformation did a little bit of trolling, it was transformed into a Lutheran church. In its near proximity, you can also find the German graveyard, which gives off a really spooky vibe to stroll through. Also, there are the Scholars' Stairs, which is basically a covered medieval stairway which was built in the 17th century to connect the lower and upper part of the citadel and make it easier for people to reach the church from the school located in the upper part during winter time. Of course, it is also important to mention the towers surrounding the citadel. When strolling through Sighisoara's old town, you will inevitably notice numerous towers guarding the city. As per theme of this video, most of them were built as protection against the pork haters. Unlike the clock tower, these towers were privately owned by various guilds of the city. Last but not least, on the outskirts of the city's center, across the Turda river, stands the Holy Trinity Orthodox Church. The church was built in 1937 in the Neo-Byzantine style, and at the time of its creation caused a little bit of controversy. Originally, the government wanted to build it in the old town. However, after citizens of Sighisoara voiced their dissatisfaction with the plan, the church was built where it is today. Moving on from Sighisoara, we head on northwest to yet another modest-sized city, Turda. With its moderate population of 47,000, Turda appears as a regular working-class town in Romania. It has a couple of cute churches alongside a pedestrian zone where one can take a stroll through and chill out. But, dear viewer, despite its mediocre facade, Turda has been an object of desire of kings and emperors since medieval ages, as the city has a mine of the mineral that makes up most of League of Legends players: salt. The Turda salt mine is one of the oldest salt mines in Europe that has been operating for 2,000 years straight, until finally ceasing its operations in the 1930s. The mine is so rich with salt that deposits could be found digging just 30 meters down. During the Second World War, the place was used as an anti-aircraft shelter, while today it has been converted into a mining museum and amusement park. Many Transylvanian children that come here spend their time licking the walls to make sure that indeed it is salty, and Serbian YouTubers aren't much different. Within the mine itself, you can find a huge Ferris wheel, as well as an artificial underground lake in which you can row a boat. Definitely a place I'd recommend for a date. Continuing with our trip, 40 kilometers northwest of Turda, lies Transylvania's biggest and arguably most important city, Cluj-Napoca. Now, Cluj, also known as Kolozsvár, is the historic capital of Transylvania and has a population of roughly around 324,000. As a settlement, it has existed ever since the days of the Dacians. However, it started gaining importance in the 15th century, after the city was declared a free town, and thus became a commercial and cultural hub of Transylvania. During the time Transylvania was a principality, Cluj was used as the capital city. Throughout the Reformation, Cluj was a nucleus of Protestantism, as many new Christian schools of thought were eagerly adopted, such as Lutheranism, Calvinism aka Reformed, and Unitarianism. During the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, Cluj was captured by the revolting Hungarian army and played a key strategic point in the war. After the Kingdom of Austria-Hungary was established, Cluj was one of the biggest and most important cities in the empire. Unfortunately, not everything in Cluj was roses and rainbows. During the late 19th century, the city saw strong programs of Magyarization and persecution of non-Hungarian citizens, which in 1894 resulted in a mass protest upon the imprisonment of two writers who had criticized the Hungarian government's efforts in the program. After World War I, the Treaty of Trianon ceded Cluj and the rest of Transylvania to Romania, after which the Romanians decided to pull a no-you card and implement their own programs of cultural conversion known as Romanization. During World War II, the city was controlled once more by Hungary and subject to many anti-Semitic measures, and over 16,000 Jews were removed. In 1944, the city was recaptured by Romanian and Soviet forces, and 3 years later the city officially became a part of Romania once more. During the communist years, Cluj experienced rapid industrialization and expansion, as well as more programs where Romanians from the countryside were settled within the city, which all contributed to how the city looks like today, architecturally, culturally, and demographically. Oh yeah, and during these days, Cluj got renamed to Cluj-Napoca by the communists as to establish its nation's origins, but even to this day everyone just refers to it as Cluj. The center of Cluj-Napoca is defined by the Unirii Square, which like most other places in Romania hosts several buildings of cultural importance, alongside with a variety of shops and cafes. The dominant building of the square is the St. Michael's Catholic Church, which is one of my personal favorites, alongside the St. Vitus Cathedral in Prague. The St. Michael Church, also known as St. Mihai Templum, has the highest church tower in the entire country, which reaches the height of 80 meters. Size-wise, it is the second largest church within Transylvania, falling behind only the Black Church in Brasov. Originally, the church started off as Catholic, but during Luther's heretical adventures, the church was converted to Lutheranism, after which it was then converted to Unitarianism, and finally back to Catholicism once the Counter-Reformation had had enough.
Most már elég!
In front of the church stands my unironically favorite statue of all time, the statue of King Mátyás Corvinus. The equestrian statue stands out by most simply due to its grandeur and craftsmanship. Along the king there are 4 other men standing below him holding flags of kingdom Mátyás had defeated. Everything from the poses to the detail to the ethno-clothing just makes this statue so intriguing to look at, and I could never get enough of it while spending my time in Cluj. Near the St. Michael Church is also the Franciscan Church, which is yet another modest medieval church that dates back to the 13th century. Interestingly enough, János Hunyadi built a cloister next to the church, in which later on the Queen of Hungary, Isabella Jagiellon, lived alongside her son, the future king, János Zápolya. North of the city center you can find another important square known as Piața Mihai Viteazul. At the square you can see several interesting structures, the first being the Babos Palace, which has a bit of a Art Nouveau vibe to it. Next to it are several more colorful buildings, as well as the statue of Mihai Viteazul, who was the first prince of Wallachia and Moldavia, as well as the ruler of Transylvania in the late 16th century. Many Romanians consider him as the country's greatest national hero, as he represents the symbol of Romanian unity, as the 3 historical parts of Romania were first ever unified under his rule. East of St. Michael's Cathedral is yet another one of Cluj's squares, Piața Avram Iancu. On it you can find the Dormition of the Theotokos Orthodox Cathedral, which is the most important Orthodox church within the city. The cathedral was built in 1939 in a unique architecture style known as Brancovenesque, which is a mixture of both Renaissance and Byzantine. Apparently, the main inspiration for the church was the ex-Orthodox church of Hagia Sophia, but if you ask me, I don't really see it. In front of it, you can also find a tall standing statue of Avram Iancu, who was a Romanian lawyer in the 19th century and was one of the main figureheads who opposed the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, and Transylvania coming under the jurisdiction of Hungary as opposed to Austria. Standing across Iancu is the Cluj-Napoca National Theatre and Opera, which is one of the top theatrical institutions in the entirety of Romania alongside the Bucharest National Theatre. Ever since its inception in 1906, the theatre has changed hands between Romania and Hungary more times than a blunt between high schoolers hiding in a park from the police after 9 p.m. During World War II, the institution had to move to Timișoara, much like many other Romanian cultural institutions who also had to dip from Cluj. Near the theatre, you can also find the Taylor's Tower, which is a 15th century line of fortification that protected the city from incoming invaders. Not too far from the tower is St. Peter's Church, which is a small Gothic church that stands in the middle of the road, reluctantly defying to move in the way of progress, which makes it more metaphorical than the entirety of Neon Genesis Evangelion films combined. North of the center, by the Soamesul Mic Canal, lies the Hungarian Opera and Simeon Varniciu Park, where a variety of events are hosted year-round. Throughout the park you can take a short stroll and check out the casino and pond, where you can see people renting out paddle boats. Following the Soamesul Channel west, you will enter Cluj's Grigorescu district, where you can find 3 more churches that tickle my fancy, those being the Biserica Pogorea Sfântului Duh, Parohia Reformata Nomer 6, and Biserica Sfântului Mare Mucenic Gheorghe. which I all find quite interesting and would definitely recommend you checking out if you're in the area. While Cluj-Napoca is majority Romanian, many of the villages around it are not. Such is the case with the small village of Mera. The village, while tiny, shows a great deal of Kolotaseg Hungarian culture, and going through it you will find small details that speak of these tales. For example, throughout the village there are several wooden gates and fences on which you can find pre-Christian Hungarian symbolism, such as the symbols for the Tree of Life, Turul, and even Old Hungarian runes. Within the village there is also a Calvinist/Reformed church, which is ordained in simple white and red decorations. And yeah, that would be a glimpse into Transylvania, an ancient land filled with a complex history, breathtaking nature and architecture, and amazing people. It is a place that is filled to the brim with secrets waiting to be explored and tales waiting to be told. It is a place which I would encourage every wanderluster to go and check out at least once, as there is no place on earth like Transylvania. Once more, big thanks to all the channel members who continuously supported the channel, especially to Julian Apostases, Mickey D, Pavan, Anthony YouTube, Rolandse, Nekwa, Emmanuel Doncilla, Andrei Sorin Parskiv, Pudelraz, Remberlads, József Borat, PC-chan, Gergo Horvat, Seal King, Badu, and Igru. You've watched Living Ironically in Europe. My name is János, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, why are you leaving?